McGillicuddy and Murderer's Pawn Shop, Season 3, Episode 2, The Barking of the Mad. October 13th, 1921. Continued. Scotland, Mr. McGillicuddy and I left the secret basement of McGillicuddy and Murders. We arrived in the pawn shop, and I was struck by how peaceful it was. It was a beautiful day outside. I could see copper leaves glowing against the window glass, and bright sun slanted across the floorboards. The second floor of the pawn shop, however, was completely deserted. "Mr. McGillicuddy," I said, as the three of us hurried across the room, "how come no one ever comes snooping? Why don't you have fussy, rich customers you can't get rid of?" "Maud," Mr. McGillicuddy said, "most people are not curious. The ones that are can usually be turned away by exorbitant prices and rude employees. You were the only one I was never able to get rid of." "Well, bully for you," I said. I followed Mr. McGillicuddy and Scotland at a partial jog over to a stone griffin. The griffin had glass eyes, and Mr. McGillicuddy removed one of them. He reached inside the eye socket and removed a sewing pin. "Ah," he said, "here we are." "That's the murder object," I said. "This is where we keep our secret prison, yes," Mr. McGillicuddy said, "inside this pin." Mr. McGillicuddy laid the pin down on the table, touched it with his fingertips, and then teleported. Instantly, the air filled with the subtle stink of blood. "Ugh," I said. "Riveting, isn't it?" Scotland said. She touched the pin. "That's murder objects for you. You can't get away from the stink of decay." "But I thought the pawn shop found a way to get rid of that bloody smell," I said. "I never smell anything when we teleport into the secret basement." "Oh, well, we've aired that murder object out," Scotland said. "Repeated use. It clears the smell away eventually. This prison, well, I don't think anyone's used it in 5 years. Apart from when we put them all in here, of course." Scotland tapped the pin. "You coming?" "I am," I said. "Go ahead." Scotland disappeared, and the bloody smell intensified. My feeling of uneasiness increased. We'd opened the eye of a mythical beast, scooped out a pin, and now the air stank of blood. Where were we going? What would it be like? I'd seen ordinary prisons. I had been locked up in one, in fact. But I wondered what a magic unusual prison would be like. I snatched hold of the pin and teleported after Scotland. I arrived, and I felt strangely like I was underground. A soft humming sound filled the walls, and I felt like I was deep down somewhere, buried in the depths of the earth. I listened for the sound of Don Mamungus having a fit, but things seemed to be calm at the moment. Mr. McGillicuddy seemed tense, but not in a panic. The room was fascinating, and I fell a little bit in love with it. It was high-ceilinged, with corridors that led off into dark recesses. It was well lit, and copper chains and green paper lanterns hung from the ceiling in abundance. Prison cells, with beautiful copper metalwork, stood too high, like we were in a zoo. The cells were large and comfortable and seemed to contain beds. I felt like I'd walked into a mystical underground city. The air smelled like lilac. "Who was murdered in this place?" I whispered to Scotland. "Well, no one was murdered here when it looked like this," Scotland said. "This is a cave. We've boarded it up and built this here. It's quite inaccessible. Quite lethal, too, if you try to escape. Too many twists and turns in the cave. Too many pits. There's no way in and out now except through the murder objects." "Speaking of the murder object," I said, "where is it?" "It always shows up here," Mr. McGillicuddy said. The pin, bright and sparkling, was sticking out of a tassel that dangled from a lantern. "Well," Mr. McGillicuddy said. He hurried towards one of the cells. "Welcome to prison." "It's beautiful," I said. "Yes, well," Scotland said, "we have to be civilized. No rats and bread and water or anything." "Dawn," Mr. McGillicuddy called. "Dawn, are you feeling all right?" For the first time, I really noticed the people behind the copper metalwork. It was all of the night enthusiasts I'd set free from the train cars. They wore their dark clothes, tinged in lime green or purple, and they paced. I felt a sudden chill. I felt like I was in a zoo, a human zoo under the earth, and it wasn't... don't misunderstand me, it wasn't that we were cruel to lock them up. This was probably the nicest prison in the world, and they needed to be locked up. I felt like I was in a human zoo, and I felt disturbed by it, because I felt like the night enthusiasts had become animals. Gone mad. The way they paced, shot their heads towards us. One gripped the bars and started to howl, actually howl, like a wolf. I felt my spine go straight and all my hair stand up. "Dawn!" Mr. McGillicuddy stopped outside one of the cells. "I moved her, McGillicuddy," a woman said. I spun around, surprised. An older woman wearing a grey dress, with about 1,000 keys hanging from her belt, stood behind us and smiled. "Ah, Lavinia," Mr. McGillicuddy said. "Is she all right?" "The fits stopped 2 minutes ago," Lavinia said, "but I think they might start up again. I'm glad you're here, especially you, Scotland." "Naturally," Scotland said. "I moved her to the large cell," Lavinia said. "There are restraints in there. I don't know what else to do. I didn't want her hurting herself. She's right round the corner here." Lavinia moved briskly around the corner, reaching for one of the 1,000 keys. "Do you stay down here with them?" I asked Lavinia, as we hurried towards Don Mamungus. "All the time?" "Well, normally. I'm very happily situated back at the secret basement. When this crew arrived, however, someone needed to keep an eye on them. I'm happy to be the jailer for as long as we have need of it." "And it's just you," I said. I felt a little stupid asking. I didn't want to insult Lavinia. God knew a woman couldn't be a jailer in the ordinary world, but that didn't mean she wasn't capable of it. It was just that there were 5 of them. What if they broke one of the spells and burst free all at once? "Freeze," Lavinia said. All of a sudden I couldn't move. I felt confused. I tried to move again, and I physically couldn't. I was frozen in position, like a child playing statues. "And unfreeze," Lavinia said. I could move again suddenly. I felt like I was dreaming, the way you sometimes can't run in your sleep. "Your magic unusual power is immobilizing people," I said. "Aren't I useful?" Lavinia said. "There are few things that could make me a better jailer." "You'd be good in a fight, too," Scotland said. "And I was," Lavinia said, "when I was younger. I remember once when we were trying to uncover the lost treasure of Palmer." Lavinia stopped herself. We'd reached Don Mamungus's cell. Lavinia unlocked the door, which looked like it was made of copper lace, and we all walked in. Don Mamungus sat on the bed. She glared at all of us. "Hello, Don." Scotland snapped open her medical bag. "How are you feeling?" Don Mamungus. I used to refer to her as the small woman, do you remember? She's about 40, diminutive, with heavily lidded eyes that were currently painted purple. Her eyes are like sharp, winged things. They're black and crackling, and you feel like she could snuff you out if she breathed too heavily. She could have looked small and unimposing on her prison cell cot, but she looked like a tiny goddess, one that was only tolerating our presence. "Can you make me stop vomiting wood chips?" Don Mamungus said dryly. "Well, I can't," Scotland said. "I'm just here to check for other damages. Did you vomit up liquid with the wood? How does your throat feel? Are you dehydrated?" "Wouldn't you like to know?" Don Mamungus said. "I would, thanks," Scotland said. "Here's where you say," Don Mamungus said. "If you're going to be like that, I'm not going to treat you." "Actually," Scotland said cheerfully, "I'm a doctor. I'm going to treat you whether you're behaving or not, because you may be injured. I'm not below having Lavinia immobilize you first, however." Don Mamungus pouted. She sulkily opened her mouth to let Scotland look inside. Once Scotland finished checking her throat, Don Mamungus said, "I bet you love this. The leaders of your enemy, all behind bars. Think you're going to bring down the night enthusiasts, do you?" "It had occurred to us," Mr. McGillicuddy said. "Thought you'd slip Wrath a little commission on the side, did you?" Don said. "Have him put all your enemies into murder objects." "Don," I said, "clearly you're a little touched in the head. I was the one who set you free." Don scowled. "Well, your throat is fine," Scotland said. "No abrasions or swelling. Drink this, please, and tell me if you feel any pain." Don Mamungus took a glass of water from Scotland and drank it. I felt a little like a girl, play-acting being a grown-up with these professionals, but I had just as much right to be here as they did. I decided to do my part and stop being squeamish. "I wish that the leftover damage from this spell would be undone," I said. "I wish that you would no longer vomit up wood, that you would have no wooden pieces, that the effect of your time in the train car would be entirely undone." Dawn looked at me with a startled expression, as though I was just babbling well wishes, and then seemed to realize what I was doing. She stared at the ceiling. "I really loathe your kind," she said after a minute. "Why can't we all just be enemies and have done with it?" Now, Mr. McGillicuddy said. "Just let us know if it worked." "Oh, I see," Dawn said. "I'm your experiment. You want to know if Wrath can be returned to the precious state of Hester Rathbone. Hester was such a nice man, wasn't he? A little artistic, maybe, but the sort of friend you tolerated at parties because of all of his enthusiasm for things no one else cared about. But a nice man. He's not a nice man anymore, is he? And you want to know if he can be put back." "We're curious," Mr. McGillicuddy said. Dawn said. She leaned forward and looked at me. "If I were you, Miss Merkel, I'd leave Wrath alone. Do you know why? Because you can heal his body, but you can't heal his soul, and it's better for a man like that to be easy to spot from a distance. It's better that his madness be marked. If you have a mad dog barking, at least you know where the mad dog is." "You think I should leave him with a furry puppet's eyeball?" I said. "Yes," Don Mamungus said, "because he has a furry puppet mind." Scotland snapped her medical bag shut. "Well, that's all I can do for you at present. Maud is the real healer in this case. Your throat looks all right. Make sure you keep drinking water. Tell us, Dawn, if your fits return. We're very interested to know if Maud can wish healing." "If I stop having fits," Dawn said, "it doesn't mean she had anything to do with it. It might simply mean that the last of the train car was out of me." "True," Scotland said, "but let us know either way, won't you?" "I'd be delighted," Dawn said. We left her cell and walked back towards the main area of the underground prison. I wondered if my words had done any good, if she was cured now from the wooden side effects of that train car. I rubbed my arms. I felt vaguely dizzy. I thought about what she'd said about Wrath, that I would never be able to cure Wrath's mind, that fuzzy puppet eyeball would keep whizzing around in his brain, even if I made him look like everybody else. "That woman always makes me feel nettly," Scotland said. "Come on, let's drink cocoa or something, or hot echinacea tea." "She has a point," Mr. McGillicuddy said, as he reached for the pin. "We have the night enthusiast leaders." Mr. McGillicuddy sounded like he was far away, like he hadn't stopped thinking about this particular fact since Dawn had mentioned it. It sounded as though it had been playing loops in his mind, and now he was breaking from his reverie just enough to bring us into it. "We have their leaders. We've never had anything like this before, not since the pawn shop started fighting against the night enthusiasts." Mr. McGillicuddy grabbed the pin and disappeared. With quick, blood-scented pops, Scotland and I went after him. Mr. McGillicuddy continued our conversation in McGillicuddian Murders, as though we hadn't just passed through time and space. "I never wanted to fight the night enthusiasts," Mr. McGillicuddy said. "I just wanted to collect doors and make a life, and then they had to show up in my city, and it was someone's job to stop them, so it ended up being me, and now here we all are. But what if we could get rid of them? Disband them once and for all, and we could all live in peace in this city and not worry about what was going on in the rest of the world." I smiled. There was something sort of sweet, and honestly a little bit irritating, about Mr. McGillicuddy and his desire to just do nothing. I felt suddenly as though we'd interrupted him from a life of carving wooden figurines. "I think it would be excellent to disband the night enthusiasts once and for all," I said. "But aren't they just going to grow another head? I mean, won't they just appoint new leaders?" "Well, that's the thing," Mr. McGillicuddy said. "If we're going to defeat them, we have to act now, and I'm not sure what to do yet. Things are still brimming. But I think we have an advantage right now that we've never had before. That's my point. I think we might have been given an opportunity to end the night enthusiasts, rather than just fighting them endlessly for the next 1,000 years. We need to think. I am not sure what to do yet. But we have a shot now." "Those leaders might know things that none of the other night enthusiasts do," I said. "Like that secret entrance that I found to break into the night enthusiast cave from a back way. Only the leaders knew how to find it, or that it was even there. We might have secrets locked up in our jail, because we have their minds locked up. There might be important passwords and locations that are now inaccessible to the rest of the night enthusiast crew." "Good," Mr. McGillicuddy said. "Good. And we can use that. We must try to use that." This is what I'm talking about. We need time to think. We may be able to do something extraordinary here, but we need to plan. Do you think they'll attack us? Scotland said. The rest of the night enthusiasts. Mr. McGillicuddy looked at us, with an expression that said he was about to turn green. Well, my dear, that is precisely why I haven't given this much thought until this moment. I don't like thinking about it. I don't like thinking about what might come next. Do they know how to attack us? I said to Scotland. Have they any idea how to get into the secret basement, even half a clue? Nothing, Scotland said. We guard it with our lives, but I have to say, it would be a good idea to keep an eye on your little friend, Maud, tighter than ever, because if she found a way to escape... I felt crushed. I had been gathering steam to suggest that Ariana be allowed out into the drawing room with us in the evenings, but now this was a bit of a trump card. Ariana escaping could be the death of us. I knew she wouldn't betray us, but they didn't, and it was too much of a gamble, letting her so near to the gate. I'll be stationing guards throughout the pawn shop as well, Mr. McGillicuddy said. We should be performing regular spells to check for any unknown presence. You realize, Diary, that while we were having this conversation, we were moving through the second floor of the pawn shop, ready to enter the murder object and head back to the secret basement. I found the back of my neck creeping. I wondered if we were being watched right now. Did the night enthusiasts care that we had their leaders? Or were they secretly relieved that the bad parents had gone away? We don't want anyone to see us entering the secret basement, Mr. McGillicuddy finished. I think a simple solution to that, Mr. McGillicuddy, Scotland said, is to simply not leave the secret base for some time. You are right, Mr. McGillicuddy nodded. Then suddenly he spun on his heel. He returned to the stone griffin and rotated its eye. He pulled out the pin in which all the night enthusiasts were kept. I think I'll be keeping this with us, he whispered. It's never good when your leaders become terrified. It gives you an uneasy feeling. I suddenly realized I was being quarantined, and I had no say in the matter. Mr. McGillicuddy, I said, if we hole ourselves in, if we decide right here and now that no one is leaving the secret basement for weeks, even months, while we try to hide from the night enthusiasts, how will I ever find out what happened to Wrath? Mr. McGillicuddy's lips quivered. He looked almost reproachful, as though I'd created this dilemma myself to vex him. Maud, he said, the pawn shop comes first. Everyone who belongs to the pawn shop comes first. Now, this is my fault for not deciding what to do earlier. I should have been thinking this through. But Don Mamungus is right. We have power over them. And Scotland is right. We're in danger. And they might attack us, and we need to hide. I wondered if Mr. McGillicuddy was starting to slip in his old age, taking so long to make a decision so important. So I can't go after Wrath, I said. Wrath will have to wait, Mr. McGillicuddy said. This is not the first time Mr. McGillicuddy's fear has stopped me. I decided I didn't want to argue, not here and now, anyway. And in the end, maybe he's right. Maybe the best thing we can do is stay hidden from the night enthusiasts, immobilize ourselves for months. At least that way, in theory, we can't be attacked by our enemies. But I can't help feeling uneasy. I think the death to all mice birds might be a different kind of threat, something much worse. And I think it's wrong to not start investigating them. Well, Diary, I'm back in my room. I'm honestly not sure what to do next. I have my feet up in slippers, and there is something sacrilegious about having your feet up in slippers when adventure is afoot. The word has gone out throughout the secret basement. No leaving. We're quarantined. We're all going to become little Arianas, in a sense, unable to leave the pawn shop's secret basement. That's sort of depressing. I'm going to go eat cheese. October 14th, 1921. Diary. I had gotten up to eat cheese when I last left you. Well, I didn't eat cheese. I did something stupid. I went out into the hallway, and there, burned into the wood of the walls, was the glowing drawing of an eye. An eye. Now, Diary, you know I have a thing with eyes. If not for the broken piece of china with the bright blue eye, I would still be writing about how boring it is to type all day for Mr. Levy, and that would be it. I would scarcely be 3 pages into you, and now look at you. It all started because of that blue eye staring up at me, and because my eyes started glowing in the dark. Well, this was something else entirely, and I was intrigued. because it was still an eye. And here's where I was stupid. I should have gone in search of someone else. I should have said, "Hello, Octavia, how are you? Can you tell me about glowing eyes that appear in walls?" And then I would have known what this eye was and what it does before I did something stupid. But I didn't go find Octavia, diary. I didn't go find Mr. McGillicuddy. I walked up to this glowing, spectral, magical thing in the wall, which I had no idea about and no reason to trust, and I touched it. Just a little poke, and then I was transported to a murderous cave where everything smelled like blood. We hope you've enjoyed Season 3, Episode 2, The Barking of the Mad, of McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop is written and performed by Minerva Sweeney Wren. All rights reserved. Friends of the pawn shop, are you hearing an ad right now for Great Jehoshaphat's Great Greedy Gut Tonic? Bubbles to soothe even the worst of tummy rumbles? You are not. Do you know why? Because this podcast is free and always will be. This podcast is advertisement free and always will be. However, there is a unique opportunity awaiting you if you become a $1 patron. Minerva Sweeney Wren hopes to start a second podcast called The Dark and Decrepit Planet of Spin, where instead of merely listening each week, you will solve real puzzles and make real choices that determine the outcome of the tale. Think of it as an enormous collaborative storytelling adventure. For more information, please go to patreon.com/SweeneyWren. Please consider sharing this podcast with your friends. A post on the Audiodrama subreddit, an in-person recommendation, or a social media share do more to market this podcast than anything Minerva Sweeney Wren can do on her own. She relies on you. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop will continue with Season 3, Episode 3, Maskwell, the Underground City.